Hello everyone, welcome to a new chess video. Welcome to the Trickster Gambit, a gambit that will let you win most of your games. And why are you so sure about that, chess teacher? Well, because you're going to bring your opponent onto your turf. And that's super important. You'll see, you're going to love it, and you'll want to try it out right away. Also, check this out. You can play this Trickster Gambit whenever your opponent plays e4. What does that mean, chess teacher? It means you'll be able to play it in the vast majority of your games, since almost all of them start with the move e4. Don't freak out about the first move I'm going to make, which is d5. I know a lot of you are going to throw your hands up because you don't like the Scandinavian defense. Careful, careful. It's true that the Scandinavian defense might be a little bit weaker than other defenses if you have over 2500 elo. But if your elo is under 2500, believe me, it's impossible that you'll notice this slight superiority. So we're not going to play a normal Scandinavian, of course not, otherwise we wouldn't be on this channel. We're going to play a super tricky, spectacular variation where your opponent probably won't know how to react. Alright, so what happens next? Normally they'll capture this pawn. Let me tell you, if they don't capture this pawn, you're going to end up in a much better position. If they do anything else, like just give up the pawn, they're probably already losing on the spot. For example, if they play something like d3 to defend the pawn, you simply trade queens, and here, not only will you have the initiative, but your opponent will also lose the right to castle. So, with that said, the most common thing your opponent will do is capture this pawn, which is really their only good move. Now, the usual Scandinavian move is to recapture with the queen, but what happens when we recapture with the queen? They simply play knight to c3 and attack our queen, and now it's our turn to have to move the queen around the board while our opponent keeps attacking it. So this is where we're going to switch things up a bit and play the tricky gambit. Knight to f6. We do want to recapture this pawn. That's true. We want to get back the pawn we're down. That's right. But not with the queen. Why? Because they can attack our queen with their knight. And here, when we make the star move of the tricky gambit, knight to f6, what we're doing is attacking this pawn with two pieces. There are two moves that people usually play against me in most cases, and I'm going to explain how to win against both of them. The first is knight to c3, defending this pawn, and the second is c4, those who really want to defend this pawn no matter what because they want to keep an extra pawn. Alright, let's start with knight to c3, which is a very logical move, right? They develop their knight, defend this pawn, but we're going to capture it anyway. Notice that we have two pieces attacking, while our opponent only has one. And pay attention to this. Normally, they'll capture this knight if they don't want to double their pawns. And once they capture, we take back with the queen and look at the position we end up with. It's the Scandinavian position, yes, but this queen can't be attacked. The knight is no longer there, so even though this queen is in the center of the board, a queen in the center is always very strong, as long as she can't be attacked. And here's where things get good. Here's where the fun starts for you. By the way, let's do something. Let's see if all of us, since we're the best chess community in the world, can get this video to 500 likes. I always say, I know it's not a lot, but as I always say, I'd rather have a few good people than a ton who don't really care about the videos. So let's see if we can reach 500 likes together. It would make me super happy. Alright, now here's where it gets good. We have the queen centralized and the opponent. They can take advantage of the fact that no one controls the center. You already know how important it is to control the center in chess to play d4. A really, really good move. Notice that now it allows them to develop both bishops, unlike if they played d3, where this bishop wouldn't be able to come out, right? They could develop the knight, the bishops, castle short. Really good move by the opponent. But that doesn't bother us, because we've got our plan in mind. Look, knight to c6. Remember the plan well? We attack this pawn with two pieces. You see that, right? First, we attacked the other pawn with two pieces. Now it's this one's turn with two pieces. They have to defend it. Knight to f3, a supernatural move. We can't really blame the white pieces for falling into these traps because they're just plain very normal moves. I almost feel bad. It's just that this tricky gambit is hard to stop. Now we pin this knight with the bishop, and the threats are starting to become obvious. We pin this knight with the bishop. The knight was defending this square. Notice how things are starting to get complicated here? What are we threatening? We're threatening knight takes pawn, and this knight wouldn't be able to recapture because the queen would be lost. So we're starting to threaten little things that with bishop to e2 seem to be stopped because now this knight is no longer pinned. However, after bishop to e2, we have the secret move, which is queenside castling. Queenside castling allows us to do two super important things, okay? The first and most important thing is to castle the king, right? We've castled the king, our king is safe, but as you can see, the most important thing is that we placed our rook on the most powerful file in the position. It's true that here we could also play this move, but the difference is that our king would be left in a really bad spot in the center. Notice that for the same price, we castle long and our rook ends up on the same powerful file, right? Now then, how can white continue? Because we're putting a lot of pressure on this pawn. So they have to defend it. It seems like c3 is a super solid move to defend it. But we're not worried about that. No matter how they defend it, we want to start breaking through. Notice that we're trying to distract this pawn to break through with everything. But okay, our opponent here might think something very logical. All right, I'll trade this pawn, yeah. And I don't care if you trade queens because look at this. Queen takes queen, bishop takes queen. And here, notice that we've traded queens. And now I don't care that you're putting so much pressure on me because you're running out of pieces. The thing is, we don't want to trade queens, okay? Sorry if I'm going too fast. I know that for many of you, I'm going too fast sometimes. I'm really sorry. But try watching the video again if you need to. It's totally free. Otherwise, there are people who are a bit more advanced and they'll get really bored, okay? I really feel bad for everyone. I can't please everybody. I'm sorry. All right? I try to be clear with how do you say this? Well, with what I say, that's it. Here, we don't want to trade queens. We want to play this wonderful move from here. We put this queen in a key spot, and now white is already lost. And you might say, Justicer, wait, how are they lost? Well, yes, just look at this rook that's now attacking the queen, a queen that has to move. It can't go here, it can't go there. Logically, the only move is to come here. It also couldn't come here because we'd capture it. Queen to b3 seems like the only option. Thanks. Good move. And now, how can we continue? Well, notice that the threats we have are already pretty big. We simply capture this pawn here. All right. And now we have so many threats available that our opponent is going to have to resign. What are those threats? First, they can't capture this knight because that would just be checkmate. You see it, right? This queen and this bishop through an X-ray are threatening checkmate. And that's not all. Because this knight, since it can't move, is also being attacked by the knight, bishop, and queen, and there's no way to defend it with any other piece. Notice that here, no matter what they do, the white pieces are going to end up losing because there are so many threats that they can't defend against them all. And be careful, like I said, we can't really blame white for playing badly here because they've just made logical moves. However, this tricky gambit is really hard to stop. Looking through the database, I've seen that when we play the Scandinavian defense, they capture this pawn 99% of the time. Now, if they don't capture it, the game is really easy for us, like I said, and then most people recapture with the queen, but only a few go for the tricky gambit, okay? Like I said, that doesn't mean this gambit is unstoppable, all right? I'm just saying it's hard to stop. Obviously, if you're playing against a computer, you'll see how to stop it. But the thing is, if you play against the computer, it'll stop anything you try. So let's learn some things, or rather some tricks that will help us win against humans, all right? The most popular response of all, we just saw it, knight to c3. And I just showed you how to play it. But what happens if they play c4, which is the second most common move? And it looks like it's going to be a little more complicated because we can't recapture here. It seems really complicated, doesn't it? Well, don't worry, because we have a good response that you're going to love, and I think you'll like it even more than the first one. We're going to play e6. We need to shake things up a bit in this whole area. Sorry if I get tongue-tied sometimes. You already know that I try to make these videos in Spanish, even though it's not my main language, okay? That's probably why sometimes it's a little hard for me to speak. But hey, a lot of you tell me that you barely notice it. So perfect. We want to play e6. Hey, for this effort I'm making every day, another like. If you haven't given me a like before, you have to give me one now. We have to break this open here in the center because it's really bothering us. However, here the white pieces are going to think I have a doubled pawn, right? And also an extra pawn. Well, I just get rid of both problems at once. I capture here, and now I don't have a doubled pawn. And also, you're not going to recapture the extra pawn, because when you recapture here, it's important with the bishop, okay, guys? It's important to recapture with the bishop. With the pawn, it would be a disaster. Well, now the white pieces have consolidated their extra pawn and they no longer have doubled pawns. They might think they're doing perfectly, but no, my friends, that's not the case. A logical move here for white, right? Makes sense, doesn't it? This pawn is very far behind. Notice that they can play in the style of the queen's gambit. However, here we have some extremely strong moves. So how do we start? We start by attacking with this bishop. Look at how wild this is. We deliver a spectacular check to the king. But you might say, chess teacher, this check doesn't do anything because it's easy to block. That's true, it's easy to block, but our pieces are really well placed to attack. We jump in with the knight and start putting a lot of pressure on this knight that's pinned by the bishop. And I'm going to tell you something. They have many options to stop this, and none of them are safe. Whatever they do, we're going to win this game. Now that we're threatening, in case anyone lives on another planet, horse for horse, pawn. For knight and bishop for... We want a pawn, and not only that, because we hacked and won the rook. So white has to react. First, what happens if they react with this knight here? That move looks bad. If you can't punish it, we're in trouble. I'll show you how to punish them all. If they play the knight from g, there are two options. They simply stop defending this pawn, and we recapture it with the bishop. Check this out. They've stopped defending this pawn, and we're attacking with both bishops. It continues. This threat, they can never capture because it's pinned. Obviously, knight to e2 looks like a disaster. Chess teacher, what about bishop to d2? Blocking the pin, a very logical move. Well, I don't know what you think, but here you stop defending this pawn. Queen takes d4, we bring the queen in, keep putting pressure here. And not only that, if they lose focus, we're also threatening checkmate over here. The threats are starting to get way, way too strong. And notice one thing. Once we have the queen over here, white has several options to stop this. First, if they try to stop the checkmate over here, it doesn't help them at all, because after bishop takes, we're threatening this checkmate again. It wouldn't be able to recapture, so they'd lose a piece. This doesn't work. And you might say, okay, but now I can capture this knight. Yes, that's right, you can capture this knight. There's no problem with that, but I'm also going to show you how to punish it. We simply recapture with check, right? They don't have many options. They must block this check. We're putting pressure with the queen, with the bishop. What move comes to your light? Well, obviously you have to block the check, for example, with the bishop, but check this out. Now, I bet a lot of you are thinking, can we capture here? Yeah, so they could capture here. Well, we have so many threats. We've got this one, we've got... What? Is this the only one? No. We have bishop takes, threatening this over here. We have multiple threats, but we're going to play knight to c6. A subtle move that strengthens the attack even more. Why? Because if we only defend against the opponent's only threat, which is bishop takes, and we would capture here, putting pressure on this point. And then the threats really are just too many. Look, we're attacking here, we're threatening to come in with the knight. If they capture, we're threatening to come here, we're threatening bishop takes. Now, what is our plan going to be? Castle long and also bring the rook over to apply pressure. That is, notice that the opponent can't do absolutely anything, not even if they make the best move, which is bishop takes bishop. Can they save themselves? Why? Because we have knight takes, they come over here, we attack this point. It's true, they have a really good move, which is queen check check, and they want to take our knight, so we have to retreat. But notice one thing, they can't do absolutely anything. Their big problem is going to be the king in the center. For example, if they want to develop this knight, we castle long. Do you remember what I told you about controlling with the long castle? And they're never going to be able to castle because this bishop is defended by the king. As soon as they try to castle, we're just going to capture here. In the future, we can capture here and bring the other rook over. You don't have to be a genius to see that this position is infinitely better for the black pieces. It's very important when we give this check, which can be easily blocked, and we've said we need to put a lot of pressure on it. There's a move we haven't considered, and we absolutely have to. And what is that move? Well, the move queen to d3. Notice that it's defending this knight, and at the same time attacking ours. So this is very easy to break down with the black pieces, but of course I need to explain it to you, because if you run into this in a game and don't play it right, you're going to lose when you actually have a completely winning position. The idea is not to retreat the knight like you all might be thinking. And if you weren't thinking that, good for you, because the correct move is bishop to f5. Why? Because it defends the knight and puts some serious x-ray pressure on the queen, which has to move right away, since we're threatening jumps in all directions and discovered attacks. So the queen can move away, that's not a problem, but it has to keep defending this knight, because if it stops defending the knight, what's the threat? Knight takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, and we win the rook. Remember that, right? So the queen has to move, and now what should we do here? Well, just this simple move like castling short. No matter what our opponent does, what's our plan? Let's say bishop to d2 to avoid this pin. It doesn't matter. Our plan is rook to e8 and to place this rook on the devastating file. Why is it the devastating file? Because it's attacking the queen and it's attacking the king. If the king moves, we'll be attacking the queen. If the queen moves, we'll be attacking the king. No matter what they do, we're going to win the game. For example, we're creating a threat of knight takes knight and then picking up the queen. If, for example, they say, well, I don't really care, I'll just take your knight, then we simply bring in the rook, and we're going to win the queen right on the spot. Notice that since it's pinned, it can't move because the king is behind it, and even if, for example, they capture this bishop, we capture here and win the queen. There's really no problem here. Check out how this tricky gambit is absolutely spectacular. I hope you loved it. If you did, please leave me a big like. It's really appreciated. You have no idea. A comment, anything at all, is really appreciated. And if you love these videos, you can subscribe to the channel. There are 2 channels with a new video every day on each one. I hope you love it. We're the best chess community in the world. And I'll see you in the next video, friends. Goodbye.